going on, guys? Midnight Sun here with a review of Assassin's Creed Shadows, which is a rather controversial game as of late. So we're just going to jump right into it. The game opens up with a very long cutscene featuring our main dude, Yasuke. Now, the cutscene was about 13 minutes, give or take, before you actually got to control the character. You do get this one choice in the beginning, which kind of can impact the story. I do like the way they have these kind of choices laid out where you're able to kind of select up and down. I like the UI elements of it, but it did feel like I was watching a movie rather than playing a game at first, which sometimes is a good thing. In God of War, the whole story kind of plays like a movie. In Assassin's Creed Shadows, however, it can be very frustrating to sit through cutscene after cutscene, dialogue after dialogue. You almost want to skip through it, but the story is so impactful that skipping through it isn't going to be beneficial. So we get into the combat, and I have not done any practice runs through the combat here. This is just kind of a natural response to, you know, what I think is the right thing to do or the right things to click. And it feels pretty good. It feels pretty smooth and fluid. When you're playing Yasuke, you do act kind of like a samurai would. There's kind of these pauses after these strikes, and you're moving relatively fast despite the armor. So as we continue to kind of cut through the soldiers here, it feels really nice. It feels like a feudal era Japanese game would, you know. They've got different elements of skills that you can combo in here. And for the early game fighting in particular, it feels just the right difficulty. Now, I haven't tweaked the difficulty too much, but, you know, we're kind of in a good spot. And then we get to go over to our next protagonist, which is Naoe. Now, the introduction of her character is shown on the opposite perspective of the fight that we just kind of witnessed a couple hours earlier. And again, this is a really good story. I actually would enjoy to see this done as a TV show, but it's kind of irritating to have so much of the beginning of the game just be, you know, you sitting here watching scene after scene and movie after movie. Now, you definitely do notice the contrast in the two characters. Yasuke is a very seasoned warrior who follows his lord's orders, and Naoe is a young girl listening to her father, trying to do her best. So, again, the first time we get control of the character for Naoe is just this little horseback ride. And it doesn't feel good because you're forced to kind of follow the character, which is kind of famous for Assassin's Creed games. At least in this one, you can hold down a follow button and it just automatically follows the character. You don't actually have to control it. You can kind of sit back and relax and again pretend like, you know, you're watching a movie here. So I don't want to spoil too much of the scenes here. If you want to play this opening scene, it's pretty great. So I'm just going to kind of cut a little bit here to when we actually get to learn a little bit more about the assassination and the stealth aspect of the game. Now, I got very frustrated here because the natural instinct for me is to click B here, and it was not crouching the proper way. And then the assassination there felt way too quick, and as if I wasn't actually, you know, assassinating a target. Like in the previous Assassin's Creed games, my movements felt wasted. So here I'm trying to get the hang of the controls, and the game's not really prompting me what to do until kind of the last second. Which, if you guys have ever played Assassin's Creed Odyssey or Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the flow of the assassination techniques was very streamlined, and it didn't feel like, you know, you were waiting for the game to catch up to you. In Assassin's Creed Shadows, it definitely feels like the game doesn't provide you the information at the appropriate time. So you can kind of see there, okay, we're crouching, or crawling, I guess in this case, but I'm not quite sure where to go, and I'm not quite sure, you know, the enemy's detection radius. So I'm going to make my way through this whole area kind of clumsily and awkward at first. Now, this kind of thing isn't going to be a big deal in the next playthrough. After you've gone through this the first time, you're going to get more familiar with it, and you're going to speed through it, and it's not going to be very much of an impact kind of at all. But for first-time players, this may be a rather frustrating sequence, and it's kind of difficult to get through, you know, all of the stealth scenes here, know when you're supposed to attack and what the benefits of it are. So right here, we're tasked with getting to this little shrine area over here. It kind of has the guards blocking the first path, and then there's a long distance of just running towards the shrine. Now that's nitpicking a little too much, and you know, that's not really that big of a deal. But it did feel like, you know, we could have moved these enemies just a little bit closer and made this more streamlined process for the scene that we get over here. And I do like the scene. I have a couple questions in my head, which is, can any blade, you know, be stuck in here? It kind of seems a little silly just to make it to where, you know, you use your hidden blade and shove it on through there. I'm not sure what's stopping another blade from doing that. I'm sure the assassins were very detailed in the process of keeping whatever this is hidden. Again, I don't want to spoil anything. But overall, this opening scene with Naoe was pretty impactful, pretty good, a little bit longer, and it definitely leans towards her story more than Yasuke's, despite starting with him. So after doing that, we get to go through castle combat, and we get to this our assassination target here. Now, at this point in the game, I really wanted to see what it'd be like to kind of go against the game's kind of rules. So we're supposed to run out of here. I decided to fight as many enemies as I possibly could because I wanted to see, hey, what's the combat like when we fight multiple enemies at once? And it was feeling okay, but it definitely does not want you to do this. The game channels you in a different direction because fighting these enemies in the beginning for a new player is increasingly frustrating and not quite up to par. But then we do get this beautiful cinematic scene here. We get the audio on here, which is just gorgeous. So I'm going to go ahead and stop for a second to let that play out. Now, there are some odd things in the game for a AAA studio or AAA game to do here, which is this fox right here. You can see it just doesn't look right. It doesn't look like it's actually interacting with things. So I decided to throw that in the video just to let people know the game does play a little unusual. Moving on to the gear, they gave me one of these like starting sets. Love that pet, by the way, one of the coolest things in the world. And equipping it was pretty late into the game, which allowed you to actually kind of experience your character and see the cutscenes as they're naturally supposed to be. Here on out, once we start equipping these things, we're going to get that damage boost, you know, which it's whatever. It's in the game. I like it. It's cool. I think it's better to not have these kinds of things unless you actually unlock them, but I'm going to use them since I have them. And now from here on out, every single cutscene will have this version of my character in it. We also unlock the kind of mastery tab where we get to put our skill points into various things. In the beginning, it doesn't really give you a whole lot of options to choose from because you have to unlock them. You can preview each of these things. I just kind of went with whatever seemed like it was going to help me out the most in this section. It did feel a little lackluster. I do like the UI elements though. Navigating this does seem pretty nice, and I could see where some of these things would be very useful in the future. But in the beginning of the game, you kind of feel a little restricted there, which is normal. You know, we're in the first couple levels here. So, you know, it's a little bit of give, a little bit of take in that sense. I'm not sure if there's a better way to do this. I do like this kind of UI element compared to the Valhalla skill tree. Running to my objective, I actually almost passed by this. And, you know, hearing my character kind of talk let me realize that, hey, maybe this is something I can actually engage in. The game doesn't really tell you these kinds of things. So pay attention to some of the people around you. And, you know, in this case, there was nothing really prompted here. We decided to get rid of the bad guys. And it's early, so I thought, hey, how bad can it be interacting with some of these things? You know, what's the worst thing that can happen from starting some of these quests a little too early? And in that sense, nothing really is impacted by doing this or even ignoring this. I'm pretty sure this guy will still be here later on if we return to this scene. But it is kind of nice to have these story elements, you know, kind of wrapped in here, thrown to the side as if the world's kind of progressing even when you're not actively doing or searching for a quest. And then we have our settlement building. Now, this took me quite a bit of time to figure out, and that was primarily because I didn't realize my controller was switched for the button layout. So after figuring this out, I was like, okay, this is kind of nice. You do get some freedom, some control on where you want to put these things and how you want to position it. I personally don't like games that give me too much free time and control like this, because then I'm investing way too much time and actually moving everything around and getting it done the correct and proper way. Shortly after this, though, it gives us our boards menu, which let us see the different characters that we have and the different custom options in here for our factions and the assassination targets and who we're after. About a few minutes later, we get into one of the kind of mini games in here, which is very tranquil, very relaxing. As I'm doing this, I'm zoning out the whole time. I did have to switch over to keyboard because my controller wasn't working very well for the button layout here. But every single time you do this, it seems to flash back to a certain moment or a certain scene in the past, which is pretty nice. I like the way that it does this. It shows the art style here, which is rather beautiful. Okay, and then we get into some eavesdropping. This is kind of standard for the series. Now, one thing that is kind of nice about this eavesdropping is it kind of focuses on the characters that we're listening into, which is what we're supposed to be doing. But if you're like me, you may have zoomed in on your own character and kind of thought, ooh, this doesn't really look nice. It's a little unusual, the camera angle that we're on here. I feel like their neck is, turned at a really bad angle. We can't see her face, and it just looks like it's kind of red blob. Now, who knows, maybe that's just my outfit that we've got going on here, but nevertheless, it could have been improved in a much better way. Then as we move forward, we get into our dialogue choices. Now, I am doing this blind. I have absolutely no idea which the correct choice is, and it feels exhausting to kind of look every single one of these up to get, the best outcome. So the first time I play a game, I play through it blind, and I try to trust my gut and trust my instincts. Now, I tend to find that my instincts are usually wrong, which is why I usually end up defaulting to looking up a guide. But this time around, we're going to try it out and see how things go. Now, it is kind of nice because as you are answering kind of some of these questions and stuff, and as you're getting through, the various outcomes that do impact the game, you have a dialogue box that you can kind of reference and see what your choices were and, kind of where the conversation went a little haywire. So it's a nice feature. It's something that I'm kind of expecting in most games nowadays, is to give the players some choice in terms of how the story actually progresses. And then after that, we get into some more combat. Now, I am showing mainly beginning scenes and beginning combat, and the reason for that is because if somebody wants to play this game, it really takes a lot out of you to watch, a YouTuber go through 7-10 hours of gameplay, making all the major decisions and choices, and then you kind of tend to copy, the correct answers and changing things out. It pulls all of the fun out of the game. And in my opinion, at least, if you really wanted to look that stuff up in a kind of review, then you would look up a let's play, of a streamer going through the whole game. And in this kind of review, I just want to focus on how does the game feel? Is the combat good? Is the graphics good in the game? Is it responsive? How are the cinematic scenes? Does it feel exhausting to play, or is it want to keep you engaged in the game as you go on further and further? And so far, Assassin's Creed Shadows, in terms of cinematics, it definitely captures your attention. Like I said before, this could be a movie or a TV series in particular, and I would watch it and I would love it. It's a little bit off-putting in terms of playing the game because I want to be rewarded with dopamine all the time, and Assassin's Creed Shadows kind of switches that over into this narrative focus. So it doesn't give you as much of a dopamine rush as previous games in the series do. But it does a pretty good job of giving players, I'm not sure what the exact word I want to use here is, but let's call it a funnel to follow. As you play the game, you're kind of naturally funneled into the main quest and the main story. And this isn't one of those games where you're really wanting to go around and explore, the whole map at least until you get kind of later on in the game and, you know, the story starts to take some turns here. But no one's going to deny that this game is not beautiful. It truly is graphically kind of an amazing game. It has its moments where, you know, you could tell that it's not quite up to par. But I kind of expect that with a lot of Assassin's Creed games. In Assassin's Creed Valhalla, when it first came out, there was a lot of issues with the game. There was a lot of major bugs. And as people complained about the game, the developers took their time and fixed a lot of these things up. Now, you could argue that the game should come out fully developed and ready, and I kind of agree with that approach. But let's keep in mind, let's view this as a work in progress still. This is a game that's still going to be updated. They're going to add expansions. They're going to add elements to it to improve the game. So maybe wait until this thing comes out on sale. Maybe wait until an expansion's released and people complain enough to get some of the things fixed and aired out. Overall, though, it is a game that I would recommend, but probably only a couple months from now. Don't get it at this point yet. That's all. If you liked the video, go ahead and subscribe and follow, and have a good one, guys.